I know that I'm kind of late to the party on this one. I know that this video has been out for several days now, almost a week. But it's better late than never because some people have been asking me, hey, have you seen that podcast from Kinda Funny Xcast, episode 137, where they interviewed Phil Spencer, pretty much where they grilled Phil Spencer. And it was a very uncomfortable podcast for Phil Spencer. Clearly, Phil Spencer, it's not sitting in a good place right now. He's under a lot of pressure, under a lot of stress, and I feel sorry for the guy to a certain extent, and I will explain why. So, what this video it's about me giving you my commentary and my reaction to this podcast. So, without any further ado, this is how it's going to work. I'm going to listen to the questions that are being asked to Phil Spencer, and then when he answers, I will commentate on his answers and on his statements. So, without any further ado, let's go ahead and let's dive right into this, shall we? Okay?
Position of Activision Blizzard King and RedFall coming out to pour reviews at the launch. Let's start off at the top. Phil, let's talk about the CMA and, of course, this Activision Blizzard acquisition. How are you feeling about this? What should be the overall mindset for Xbox gamers when we look at this after months and months of conversation?
Yeah, we remain confident. Obviously, the news from the CMA, which for those not tracking all this, is the United Kingdom's regulatory board on acquisitions to block the acquisition. We'll be appealing that. That's our plan. We continue to work with the European Union. We'll continue to work with the FTC. I think there are like 14 jurisdictions all up. We're working on approval. I think we have 9 approvals so far. But the CMA decision was disappointing. I've been talking to that group for coming up on a year. They've defined a market of cloud gaming that, in my mind, doesn't really exist yet today. But they have a point of view that maybe we have a lead in a market that is just forming, and that this content could somehow prohibit others from competing in that market. But we'll appeal. We stay on it. The company remains very, very committed. We think Activision Blizzard King is not our strategy, but it is an accelerant for our strategy. So we're still heads down and working through regulatory.
This, guys, this is just business. Companies buying other companies, making mergers with other companies. You can't really hate on Phil Spencer for this. Sony would most likely do the same thing if they could, right? To gain an acquisition of, let's say, some Nintendo games. Imagine if Sony could somehow merge with Nintendo. That's it, checkmate, it's over. So this is just business. It sucks that the European Union has different laws over there, and the CMA has stopped the acquisition. But hey, business is business, so there's nothing here for me to criticize Microsoft or Phil Spencer, because essentially this is business. Any company, Sony, Microsoft, Amazon, etc., higgy-jiggy, you name it out there, would essentially try to do the same thing if they could somehow merge with that company or buy out that company. So nothing here to criticize. So let's move on.
I am pleased to hear that, of course, as a big fan of many of those gaming franchises over there. I'm looking forward to seeing this deal go through, and I'm glad to hear that you and the team are still hard at work at making this happen. It's been a long road. It's been a tough road to talk about it each and every single week, kind of falling apart, but I'm
It's always the
happy to hear
Brits, isn't it, Mike?
It's
We're always the fly in the ointment. We just got to rain on everyone's parade.
It's a tough one, Gary. Of course, we got to move on to the next one. Phil, of course, RedFall has released from Arcane Austin, and it's been a tough release week for that, coming out to low reviews and a lot of disappointment from many fans. Can you talk about that? What is your thoughts right now as we head into the first week of this game being out?
Yeah, man, I'll start. I'll hit RedFall, but I'll just say all up. There's nothing that's more difficult for me than disappointing the Xbox community. I've been a part of it for a long time. I obviously work on Xbox, head of the business, have a lot of friends, get a lot of feedback. And just to kind of watch the community lose confidence, be disappointed. I'm disappointed. I'm upset with myself. I kind of revisit our process. I think back to the announcement of 60 frames per second, and then we weren't shipping 60 frames per second. That was kind of our punch in the chin, rightfully, a couple weeks ago. And then seeing the game come out, and the critical response was not what we wanted. And it's disappointing. And so, kind of pick myself up. What can we learn? How can we get better? One thing I'll fight is kind of what went wrong. There's clearly quality and execution things that we can do. But one thing I won't do is push against creative aspirations of our teams. Then a lot of people will say, hey, you've got teams know how to do one kind of game. Just force them to go do the one kind of game that they have a proven track record for. And I'm just not a believer in that. Maybe that means I'll underdeliver for some of our fans out there. But when a team like Rare wants to do Sea of Thieves, when a team like Obsidian wants to do Grounded, when Tango wants to go do Hi-Fi, when everybody probably thought they were doing Evil Within 3, I want to give the teams the creative platform to go and push their ability, push their aspirations. But I also need to have a great selection of games that are continue to come that surprise and delight our fans. And
All right, so there's two sides of the coin to this subject as far as Redfall and what Phil Spencer had made a statement here, because it is a statement that he made. So let me give you two sides of the coin. All right. On the one flip side of the coin, which is heads, I agree with him that it's good to let creative developers make their own art. You shouldn't suppress freedom of art. And this is what's going on right now in Hollywood. The film directors are being told what they can make, what they can't make, and et cetera, et cetera. There's a list of things that they have to go by to make a movie because of all this whole wokeness. So I like what he said, the aspiration to let creative team make what they want to make. And I agree on that. So on that side of the coin, heads, I agree on that. Now, flipping to the tails, and this is the double-edged sword. What I don't agree with Phil Spencer is that you can't just let a big brand like Xbox become managed like this. You have to have at least one or two AAA games, new IPs, successfully, to give some breathing room for this console to even exist, or for this brand to even exist, or, for the lack of a better word, for this brand to be relevant. That's the word I'm looking for, to be relevant. You got to have some AAA exclusive games to keep this brand relevant. I agree, yes, let developers make what they want to make, but once they become part of your company, you also have obligation to tell the same development team, okay, I'll let you guys make the game you want to make, but this next game, I want it to be an exclusive one that will be a AAA game. We're going to throw a bunch of resources, bunch of money in it. We're going to hire Hollywood writers, da-da-da-da-da. We're going to hire actors for motion capture. We're going to create something very like Avatar, like AAA game. So I think that's where Phil Spencer made a mistake. He got relaxed. He got comfortable. And I think this is true. Ever since 2017, since the release, of Project Scorpio, I think Phil got comfortable. And again, Phil is on my friends list. He's my friend. He's on the Xbox. He's my friend. But seriously, Phil, I think you got relaxed. I think you got comfortable where you felt that if we let people choose where they want to play, if we give people all these games on the Game Pass to play and save money, I think that will somehow help this brand. Now, I have nothing against that service. I love that service. It's a great service. It's the same service that has inspired Sony, PlayStation Plus Premium. The service is great. And I'm not like dissing Game Pass. Game Pass is awesome. But you can't just rely on the Game Pass service alone. Like I said, it's good that you have that. It's good that you have these options. Play anywhere. Go to any device you want to play it. That's all great. But at the same time, you gotta have some heavy hitters, AAA exclusives to keep the brand relevant. It's been relevant for 2 decades, but now it's losing that momentum because there's only one king in town, and that's Sony PlayStation. Well, Nintendo doesn't have no competitors because Nintendo's got all of these exclusive games and characters that they can milk that cow forever. While on the other hand, Sony right now, it's like, well, we're sitting at the top of a mountain. We are like pretty much the kings of the kings. And that's also not a good news because Sony is going to be like, we don't have to push too hard. We don't have to work too hard now because we have no competition. And when you don't have a competition, guess what, my Sony fanboys? Sorry that I have to use that term. Guess what, my Sony fanboys? That's a bad news for you too. This means that Sony doesn't have to work twice as hard, twice as much to bring out these AAA games. I mean, they'll bring them here and there, but they don't have to because they're sitting on the top of the mountain. Remember, PlayStation cares about the business first. And what is the business first? It means money, okay? Please try to understand that. You might be a fanboy, you might be a hardcore Sony fan, but please try to understand that Sony cares first about money, just like Microsoft cares first about money. They don't really care that much about, they don't even know you. There's too many people out there. What makes you think that they're going to care what you have to say? The only thing they care is the money. So if Sony is the only master in the town and there's nobody else, there's no other masters to compete with, well, this master is going to get lazy. Sony is not going to have to put up any hard work. They're just going to start pumping out these Spider-Man. Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 3, Spider-Man 4, Wolverine 1, Wolverine 2, Wolverine 3, Wolverine 4, God of War, whatever, 3000. And they're going to get lazy. And you're going to get tired of those games. Because you're like, all right, I had enough of Spider-Man, I had enough of God of War, I had enough of Wolverine, blah, 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 blah. So competition helps us. Please try to understand this. And I'm looking at this from a unbiased point of view. Competition, it's good for us. It's good for us, the consumers. Because when companies are competing with each other, then they have to create great products. They have to create some good stuff. So competition is great. Competition is what made all of this happen. You know? So I like competition. And I'm not rooting to see, Xbox fail or Sony win. I'm not into this ridiculous console war. I'm not mingled into this ridiculous console war as some of you guys are invested in. Because I like competition. I don't want to see Xbox fail. For the same reason, I didn't want to see Stadia fail. It sucked. It sucked when Stadia failed. It did, because I didn't want them to fail, but they did fail. And they failed because they didn't listen to us, the consumers. So anyway, competition is good. Like I said, I agree that you should let developers create what they want to create, but at the same time, you have a business to run, you have a company to run, you need some heavy hitters. You can let them make some games here and there for themselves, be creative, have that freedom of creativity, but at the same time, you got to remember, you got a business to run. You got to also create something big. You make a mediocre game, then you make a big AAA game. All right?
And we underdelivered on that, and for that I apologize. It's not what I expect, not what I want. But it's ours to deliver.
So following up on that, Phil, so again, I appreciate the transparency on that, but there is a second component to this. And as you may or may not know, I talk to a lot of people in the Xbox community because I want to understand, what people are excited about, what they're frustrated about, things like that. So kind of sticking on this conversation about Redfall, but it's kind of a bigger general question as well. And I kind of want to read directly from this so I make sure I get it crystal clear. So what goes into the decision to delay a game when you launch it feature incomplete or there's a bunch of technical issues? Obviously, we've seen recent examples around the industry. Redfall and Halo Infinite are two that stick out in my mind for Xbox. We obviously have seen the review scores. Clearly, we've had the opinion that the game should be delayed. We know every developer wants to ship the best game that they possibly can, but from your level, what's the balance there on when to ship a game that may be feature incomplete or have some technical issues, or just simply give it more time and delay it?
Well, I think those are, and I'm happy to go very deep on this. I think if I think about a team's execution on a game, we had a creative vision, and did we realize that vision through the game that we created? That's not a delay question if the answer is no. Like, you can't take something that you started on. This isn't a Redfall specific conversation,
right.
But we will build games that review in the high 80s, and we will build games that review in the 60s. I mean, it's just kind of part of being in game publishing. And if you're afraid of that, then you shouldn't be in the entertainment business. You shouldn't be in the games business. That said, every time we deliver something below our own internal expectations that surprises us, we should check our process. I don't look at the review scores on Redfall, and there are quality issues, and we're working on those. But I think there's a fundamental piece of feedback that we get that the game isn't realizing the creative vision that it had for its players. That doesn't feel like hey, just delay it. That feels like the game had a goal to do one thing, and when players are actually playing, they're not feeling that thing. They're not feeling the creative execution of the team. When a game needs to be delayed, what we did with Halo, we did with Starfield, we did with Redfall, because the production timeline is saying we have this vision and our production timelines don't get us to the completion of that vision, we do delay games. We do that. Learning about the quality, I've seen them. I know there are bugs in Redfall that's launching. But when I look at the crash rates on the game, because we get all the telemetry of everything that's happened, it's not out of proportion for a game that has just launched. It's kind of in the pocket of what we would expect. That's not to deny any of the animation, streaming of texture bugs, the AI bugs that we've seen. We will go work on those. But when I look at the review scores of this game, it's did we have enough of creative differentiation in our core idea? And did we realize that creative ambition? I'm a huge supporter of Arcane Austin. Their track record is awesome. I love a lot of the great games that they've built. This is one where the team didn't hit their own internal goals when it launched. I think it's maybe a little simplistic to just say, hey, if you would have just delayed it 3 months, the core creative of the game would have delivered on something that was different than what it was.
And we have to be fair. I agree with Phil Spencer here. I mean, tell me a game that came out that didn't have bugs. I mean, look at the Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Everybody was so hyped about that game, and the hype behind that game was ridiculous, and it turned out to be mediocre. All right, it's an open world, but it was a really good idea to make it open world. It became repetitive. It became boring. It kind of stirred away from the story, from the main storyline. That's just my opinion. But it came with a bunch of bugs. I mean, I have the game. I have it on PC, on the EA Play Pro. It came with a bunch of bugs. Frame rate issues on PC was totally unplayable. There was a bunch of updates and patches. So I agree with Phil Spencer. Hey, let's not have double standards, right? You know, if you're going to criticize RedFall for having bugs and it's part of Game Pass, but then you're not going to criticize Star Wars Jedi Survivor and all these other games that came in the past, it's kind of unfair. If you're not going to criticize Forspoken for also having some bugs and issues in the frame rate when it first came out, and they got patched up on the PC, right? When it came out on the PC as well. It was PC and a PlayStation. Then we're having a double standards. Then you are cherry picking. You're cherry picking and choosing who you're gonna pick and blame and roast. Then it's turning into a politics arena, like, you know, red versus blue, etc., etc. For example, you look at the Hogwarts. You look at the Hogwarts Harry Potter game when it first came out. A lot of bugs, a lot of issues, a lot of problems, but it got fixed. It got fixed. So I agree with Phil Spencer. Not that I'm saying, oh, this should be a new standard. I'm not making any excuses. These developers get paid a lot of money, and they do. And they have a job to do. And the job is to test it. Test the game before you release it. Or put it in early access. Early access, it's something that Cliffy Bleszinski always talked about, the creator of God of War. I mean, not God of War, Gears of War. I'm sorry. Gears of War. That's the Santa Monica Studios. This is, Cliffy B, Gears of War. Cliffy Bleszinski says he likes open betas. He likes betas, early accesses, because early access really helps you determine, hey, did we miss on something? Did we miss on this bug over here or that bug over there? Open betas, early accesses really can help the game. And I wish that Starfield would put their game in open beta and early access so we can help the game be a better game when it gets ready to launch in September. And then in September, they can patch it up even better. And then throughout the coming months into 2024, we'll have an excellent Starfield game. And I agree that, you know, there shouldn't be any excuses for bugs. I don't want this to be a new standard. And I don't think Phil Spencer wants this to be a new standard where you are releasing the game with bugs. That shouldn't be a new practice. I'm against that practice. Like I said, these developers gets paid a lot of money, and they do. I know for a fact. You got a job to do, man. You need to test the game. You need to make sure everything's running smooth. Or you should put it in open beta. Let people give you feedback. Okay, this here needs to be fixed. Flickering on the textures here. Dropping frame rate on here, on this level. The characters appearing, disappearing on that level. Feedback can really help developers make a better game. So I don't think we should make any excuses. And I don't think Phil Spencer here is making any excuses. You should test the game before you release it, or put it in early access, put it in open beta several months prior to being released, so you can fix those issues. This is an issue that follows not just RedFall, but Electronic Arts, CD Projekt Red, a bunch of Bethesda, a bunch of big companies out there, especially Electronic Arts. Look at the Battlefield and what a disaster that was. So there shouldn't be any excuses. In my opinion, But at the same time, let's not have a double standard. Let's not pick apart Microsoft, Xbox, and Redfall, and then turn the blind eye on all the other developers and all the other big giant studios, right? Let's not cherry pick. If we're gonna be transparent, then transparency goes across the board. That means everybody has to be transparent. We can't cherry pick and choose. Because if we do that, well, that's called hypocrisy. Hypocrisy. All right, so let's not be hypocrites. Let's be fair. The word is fair. And second word is respectful. So let's be fair and respectful here. Don't act on your emotions. Be reasonable. And let's look at this fairly, respectfully, and reasonably. So let's continue.
So I look at them in different camps. If there's a production timeline issue, we've been open to delaying. If we just have more bugs than we should have at the end of a game, we're open to delaying. At some point, we have to have a creative vision and put the game out, and reviewers and players will tell us what they think.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, of course. Please, Gary.
So I have just a couple of small observations and then a question. First of all, I want to give Phil props for coming on here
Give him
today
props,
and talk just for a minute about why I admire Phil, because he and I have been here before. Back in 2020 during the pandemic when I was doing Animal Talking, Phil, you'll remember this. Phil was booked to come on my dumb Animal Crossing talk show. And then after he was booked, the news came that Halo Infinite was going to be delayed and would not ship with the Xbox Series X and S. And it was you'll remember, it was a big deal. There was a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth and people rending their garments. And I was fully prepared for the other shoe to drop. I was waiting for a call from Xbox PR, from Jeff, your friend of mine, Jeff, over in Xbox PR, to say, Phil's not going to be able to come on the show live because, it's a big mess right now. We don't want to put him in the firing line for that. And Jeff called and I thought, here it is. Here comes the other shoe. And he was like, Phil just wants to know, when's the tech rehearsal? It's going ahead. And he came on a live talk show and took a bunch of tough questions on a really tough subject and took it on the chin. And I've always admired him for that, it would have been very easy for him to pull out, and he didn't. He came on and he's doing it again now. And I salute Phil for that. The other point I want to make is that every time, there may be some Sony platform warriors out there right now crowing about the fact that Redfall has underperformed. Just want to point this out as a creative. Every time somebody takes a big bet, especially a big AAA bet on an original idea, a new IP, and it fails, everybody suffers. It's bad for everybody because it makes it that much harder for the Phils and the Jim Ryans of the world, the big, the creative, the decision makers to take a chance on them. Oh, but the last time we did that, it didn't work. Maybe let's just make a sequel to the next thing, or let the algorithm tell us what to do. So every time
This is a really good point that he's making here regarding the if the Redfall fails, if Starfield fails, then this is a bad news for everybody. This is a bad news for Sony and everybody else. Because then how do you determine, what should we make, right? Then you are totally afraid of what should we invest. Right? You're like, oh my God, should we invest into this? Nah, it's too risky. They tried that, didn't work out. Should we try this? Nah, let's not go there. Here's what he's trying to say. When you limit yourself to a certain algorithm of certain games that you want to make, then you're playing it safe. And when you are playing it safe, look what happened to Hollywood. They're not taking any risks anymore, and this is why the movies suck. This is why no one's watching their movies, because they're limited, because they have this whole woke agenda injected inside their studios in Hollywood, Los Angeles, California. And they can't make a good movie because of the limitations that they have shackled around themselves, shackled themselves in this limbo of limitation. And when you are shackled in this limbo of limitation, then you can't have any creative, juicy ideas. What made video games so cool when I was growing up, I'm 44 years old. I'm an old geezer. What made video games so cool is these risque, juicy, creative ideas out there, right? All kinds of games, all kinds of variety, all kinds of risks that you would never think, oh my God, we're going to make this game? Yes, we are. No one ever thought that there's going to be a Grand Theft Auto game. What? You're stealing cars? You're doing this? You're robbing places? What? But it was made. And look at it now. Grand Theft Auto is the most successful game ever, period, in the history of gaming. Made trillions of dollars worldwide since 2 decades now. So I agree with him, to that point. I just want to kind of comment on that.
Somebody takes a risk on something new, and especially if it involves something different in game design. Let's try something that has been done. When it doesn't work, it hurts everybody. So I just want everyone to be clear. This sucks for everybody. And I see it in my business, I see it in Hollywood, I see it in film and television. It's why so much content is so generic and derivative and formulaic, because everyone's afraid to take a risk. And when something new succeeds, it's good for everyone. When something new and original fails, it's bad for everyone. So I just want to acknowledge that this is like a big shit sandwich, and we all have to take a bite, including the Sony people, including everybody. Specifically with sorry, this is a long time. Specifically with a question for Phil, I want to talk specifically about RedFall. When you say that you're disappointed in the reaction, that to me suggests that the reaction was something different than what you were expecting, what you were hoping for. But I know that when these big AAA games, they get subjected to all kinds of internal testing. Focus groups come in. There are third-party companies that will come in and even write like mock reviews or come like hit detection out that will tell you, here's what you can expect the press to make of your game. So usually you've got a sense of what the game is how it's going to be received before it's released, so you can be prepared for it. So Phil, when you say you're disappointed, does that mean that you thought the game was going to be better received, or was it in line with expectations? How surprised were you by the reaction, or how, like, internally, how much do you know? I feel like this one, we know the game it has problems. Like, to what extent was this different from what you expected? And also, and sorry, I know I've been talking a long time. And the second part of that is, when a game is released now, it's not like the old days when a cartridge was shipped in a box and the release of the game was the end of the game's like development cycle. Now it's just the 1.0 release is just a point on the roadmap. To what extent, given that what we're talking about here is not just 30 frames, but design issues, things that may be more conceptual, to what extent do you think, or are you committed to continuing to work on the game and getting it maybe a year down the road, Cyberpunk, No Man's Sky? We've seen these redemptive stories in the past. To what extent do you hold out hope that you can still get the game closer to where you wanted it to be at launch? I know that was a lot.
No, at first I thought your words about creative ambition of teams, you especially, I mean, you've lived this, you've done this, are very well said and very spot on. So thank you for that. And that's why I love your voice in this community, because you've created, you've seen kind of ups, and as anybody in the industry, we've all seen downs. And on the score, yeah, we do mock reviews for every game that we launch, and this is like double digits lower than we thought we would be with this game went through our mock reviews. And that's what's one of the disappointing things. Like we would never strive to launch a game that we thought was going to review in the low 60s. It's not part of our goals. If you look at our review scores over the last year, it's not a defense at all. If you look at the review scores over the last year, I think the teams have done a better.
All right, so here is where I disagree with Phil. And I love Phil. He just said something that is like, he said he would never release a game that's in a low review score of 60. Yeah, but Phil, how are you going to know that if you're not releasing open beta? How are you going to know that if you're not releasing a demo? How? I mean, you don't have a crystal ball. Clearly, you don't have a crystal ball, because if you did have a crystal ball, you wouldn't be doing this podcast, and you wouldn't be, having to explain yourself as to what went wrong. All right. So there, I think he kind of was not being honest about that. Redfall has been delayed. You have plenty of time to look at the development, look at the game, play the game. I'm sure you played it. You had plenty of time to, tell the team, hey, put this on the Game Pass. let the Game Pass subscribers play the demo. Let them give us the feedback, and based on the feedback, you could make a decision to delay it, or maybe delay it furthermore to implement some better storyline, better characters, to rework on the game. All right. So I don't think Phil was honest here, to be honest. Me personally, no pun intended. For me, being honest to Phil, not being honest about this, he said that he would never put a game that's below 60. Well, Phil, release the demo next time. Like, you can save Starfield from below 60 if you release open beta right now. That's it. I mean, right now, Mr. 4K is giving you the best advice ever. Talk to Todd Howard. You're a really good friend with Todd from Bethesda. Tell him, hey, put this in early access. This is our gift to Ultimate Game Pass members. Let them try it. Let them give us their feedback before we release it in September. We got plenty of time. We got May, June, July, August. We got 4 months to test this game before we put it out there in September. So let Game Pass Ultimate subscribers, let them try the game. Put it in open early access beta. I don't know, why is this so hard for, this is a sad truth. This could be easily fixed. A lot of these things don't need to happen. A lot of this stuff doesn't need to happen. We don't have to be in this sucky world of shit sandwich, for the lack of a better word. This could be avoided. But the problem is, Phil Spencer is not listening. He's not listening. That's the problem with a lot of these CEOs and a lot of these executives and head of studios. They're not listening to the feedback. You have to listen to the feedback. Remember, you are creating the games for us. Got to keep that in mind. Okay. I know a DJ, and he goes to different venues to DJ. Now, he personally likes tech house music, but sometimes he has to go to a different venue where they like country music, where they like hip hop, where they like R&B, where they like reggae, right? So you have to play the music for the audience that craves for that certain genre. So same thing with video games. You're making video games for people. You're not making video games for yourself. This is something that I don't understand why these developers are having a difficult time to understand. You are making video games for people. You're not making it for yourself. Okay? So anyway, let's skip to the Phil on lesson learned, and because I don't want this video to be any longer than it needs to be. And then I'm going to comment and give my final thoughts on this. Okay?
Funny.
Paris was just talking about what have you learned. And I want to go back to that in the case of Redfall, even just as a case study for things like this when they happen in general. Because Redfall wasn't even the only game to stumble out of the gate this week. Look at the PC version of Jedi Survivor. What a mess. Unacceptable that that game shipped in the state that it was. And they must have known. It was, oh, geez, the game has bugs. No, you knew, and you shipped it anyway. So EA Respawn, for example, even on a massive title like that, it's going to be a Game of the Year contender. We all know that. But like the PC version was unacceptable. My understanding is the PlayStation version's a bit of a mess as well. So we're still seeing this stuff happening on the regular. Just in general, when things, I'm fascinated, as you might know, I'm fascinated by the subject of failure because I've experienced a lot of it in my own career and in my personal life as well. And I think about it a lot. The number one quote that I stole from a person much smarter than me, I talk about it all the time when I talk about writing at creative seminars and things like that, is failure is not the opposite of success, it's a part of it. But that's only true if you can get past feeling sorry for yourself when something fails and sift through the rubble and start figuring out, well, what can we learn? What can we learn from this failure? What can we take from this? What is teachable? And so I wanted to ask Phil, both in general and in the case of Redfall, I know you said you were going to work in towards kind of turning the game around, but like, do you have a formal process? And what does it look like in the case of Redfall when something doesn't meet expectations? Is it something you get into right away, or do you wait for the dust to settle? What is the post-mortem process? What is the what went wrong, and how do we prevent this from happening again process look like at Xbox?
Yeah, it's a great point, and I think I love your quote, Gary. I might lift that from you. People don't have to care about this, but I'll talk about it. When we acquire studios, there's games that are in development when we acquire a studio, and then there's things that are either really early in development or not even conceived yet. And I think we need to improve on engaging in games that are midway through production when they become part of Xbox. I do think there's a different expectation for a game and even a team when you've been third party and all of a sudden you become part of first party. There's a different expectation in terms of how you're going to perform on our console. I think there's a different competitive set when people look at what this game is and the other games that they're going to say, hey, I want this game to feel as competitive as this other game on another console platform in our case. And we didn't do a good job early on in engaging with Arcane Austin to really help them understand what it meant to be part of Xbox and part of first party, and use some of our internal resources to help them and kind of move along that journey even faster. So we kind of left them to go work on the game. They're a very talented team. I love that team, and I still do, and I will totally bet on them to do another great game. But when like Matt Booty and Jamie Leader, who's running ZeniMax, and I sit down, I think we can engage earlier with our different studios. And I do think there's a difference when we come in when the creative's already set on a game. That's not washing our hands of any of the creative. Every game we ship from our teams is an Xbox game. And so it's a full responsibility for it. But thinking about how our internal processes of dev assistance, even some of our internal ATG resources, what's the Advanced Technology Group, and how those work with our internal teams. I think we can do a better job with our internal teams. We did a better job with Starfield. Again, nobody should believe it until they're playing the game, but that game was earlier on in production, and it was easier for us to kind of swarm a bunch of people to go and kind of help with some of the technology on our platform and ensure that we're going to ship a quality experience there. And we should have been there for Harvey and the team earlier. I think that's on us. And then through the process, it's an Unreal game. We have a bunch of studios that have done some really great work on Unreal over the years. And I think we were too late to help in that when they had certain issues that they were working through, which any team will. It's nothing to do with the specific engine. But we have a lot of experience, and we needed to get on that.
All right. And again, I respect Phil. I mean, he is my friend on the Game Pass on the Xbox. And he plays a lot of Vampire Survivors. And again, no disrespect to you, Phil, but you just said something that just kind of caught my attention. You said that when it comes to Starfield, it's a great game, and you'll know it when you start playing it. Okay. You don't have to believe me, but you'll know it when you start playing it, when you put a controller in your hand. But why can't we put a controller in our hands right now? Why can't you put it in early access? If you are so confident with Todd Howard, and I know Todd Howard is the director, creative director of that game, right? The great Todd Howard. If you are so confident that Starfield is so great, why not put it in early access? I would want to share it. If I'm working on something, I want to share it with my members. I want my members to see it. I want the feedback. I want them to let me know what they think or what can be done better. So, again, it seems like a damage control here. Like, he's kind of jumping, wishy-washy, damage controlling this whole situation, and it feels like a damage control to a certain extent. There's some honesty where he admits that he could have done better with Redfall, but at the same time, there's a little bit of a damage control here. I sense some damage control, and I don't think damage control can really help you. When you fail, hey, I failed. You got me. All right, let's learn from this failure. That's it. I'm stripped naked. I failed. You got me. I'm yours. But let me learn from this mistake. How can I avoid this from happening again? And I feel that he's trying to be transparent, but at the same time, there's this damage control, which I don't think it's helping him. I don't think it's benefited him to damage control this whole situation. Hey, you failed. Suck it up. Admit it. And let's learn from this. So I just want to point that out. Like, before we end this video, Starfield, put it in early access. No one's going to believe you right now. Because right now, I'm sorry to say this, Xbox has no credibility. They can't take your word for it. You got to show to us now. You have to prove to us that Starfield is that next big thing, the new IP for Xbox coming this fall in September. And how do you prove that? You prove that by putting in early access to Game Pass Ultimate members. I'm not saying give it to everybody, just Game Pass Ultimate members, those who are part of Game Pass. Let us try it. Let us test it, and we can see it for ourselves. And whatever criticism we give you, it will benefit the developers. It will benefit developers, even if they have to delay it till December or November. Doesn't matter. But it will help the game be a better game. But right now, we're in the dark. We're sitting in the dark, and we really don't know what Starfield's going to feel like, what's going to play like. And we have to take your word for it. And every time we take your word for it, Phil, the game turns out to be a failure. I'm sorry, but that's the honest truth. All right, let's look at this final quick hit question, and then we're going to wrap this video. It's been about an hour.
Phil, I'm going to rattle off a couple quick ones with you, Phil. Of course, we talk about 60 frames, 30 frames. Should Xbox players expect a clear message this summer with Starfield with 30 and 60 frames? That's a big lesson learned, as you brought up. Should we expect that answer as clear as day?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a great one. Another one, you see a lot of conversation, of course. I want to praise you and the team for really elevating the PC side of this Xbox ecosystem. I think we've seen a lot of great strides in that. But when you see the community talk about the console side of things, do you think you've lost the focus or maybe put too much onto the PC side? Do you think that the console is still getting the console love that it deserves, whether it be the homepage update, achievements, of course, looking forward and using the power of this next gen? Do you think you guys have lost that focus, or is it still there, and can we see more love on that side?
Well, we'll definitely continue to focus on making our console experience as great as it can be. I like the homepage refresh and some stuff. I will say, this might be disruptive as well. We have a different vision. Paris talked about this. It's play the games you want with the people you want anywhere you want. We want Xbox to be something that people who buy our console can feel like they're a member of. Obviously, who are playing on PC, who are playing on cloud, that they feel like they're full members of our ecosystem. Game Pass players can play on many different devices, and we remain fully committed to that. We're not in the business of out-consoling Sony or out-consoling Nintendo. There isn't really a great solution or win for us. And I know that will upset a ton of people, but it's just the truth of the matter is that when you're third place in the console marketplace and the top two players are as strong as they are and have, in certain cases, very, very discrete focus on doing deals and other things that will that kind of make being Xbox hard for us as a team. That's on us, not on anybody else. Our vision is that everybody who's on console has to feel like they have a great experience and they're a first-class citizen. They've invested a ton in our platform. But we are not in a position, and I see it out there. I see commentary that if you just build great games, everything would turn around. It's just not true that if we go off and build great games, all of a sudden you're going to see console share shift in some dramatic way. We lost the worst generation to lose in the Xbox One generation, where everybody built their digital library of games. So when you go and you're building on Xbox, we want our Xbox community to feel awesome. But this idea that if we just focused more on great games on our console, that somehow we're going to win the console race, I think doesn't really lay into the reality of most people. Like 90% of the people every year who walk into a retailer to buy a console are already a member of one of the three ecosystems, and their digital library is there. This is the first generation where the big games that they're playing were games that were available last gen. When you think about Fortnite and Roblox and Minecraft, like the continuity from generation to generation is so strong. I see a lot of pundits out there that kind of want to go back to the time where we all had cartridges and discs, and every new generation was a clean slate, and you could switch the whole console share. That's just not the world that we are in today. There is.
All right. Oh, man, there's a lot to take in. A lot to take in here. All right. So before I end this video, because I know I'm sorry that I have to make this video 1 hour, but there is no other way for me to make this video more than 1 hour because the lengthy 41 minutes of this podcast, because I have to commentate on this. So what Phil Spencer said here in the closing is some truth and honesty, of course, and then also some damage control as well. So let's dive into it. The truth and honesty is that we are in a different world today in terms of gaming. You know, a lot of us are looking in the past and, you know, thinking about video games like this is 1998 or 1999 or 1997, right? In the good old days or early 2000s of, you know, PlayStation 2 and the Dreamcast and Xbox original 2001. That's, you know, Nintendo GameCube, you know, good old days. And those were great times. Those were wonderful times to be a video gamer. And I had a great time and privilege to be part of it. And as I'm sure many of you who are my age had a privilege to enjoy that generation. But I agree with Phil that this is a different time. We live in a different era. I mean, it's 2023. We're almost halfway done with this year. 2024 is just around the corner, you know. This is a different time. And we have to accept that. I'm old. Look at me. Gray hair everywhere. I'm getting old. Look at me. I'm an old geezer. I'm only going to get older. I'm not going to get younger. I'm not going to look any sexier or anything like that. I'm going to be an old fart. So you have to come to realization. We have to accept that fact. And I accept that, to what he said, that we are in this transition of a different era of gaming where people want everything, press at any given time, take it with me. And this is why I keep telling people cloud gaming is the future. And even Phil Spencer is indicating to you that the consoles are dying. Sure, we'll see a PlayStation 5 Pro, maybe PlayStation 6, maybe down the road, but I don't think. I think PlayStation 5 Pro, I think that's it. I think digital and cloud is where we're going because of this new era of distributing the video games. And if we learn one thing from pandemic is that investing into consoles, you know, dealing with resellers and buying it in many quantities and shortages of consoles, we have learned that that's not a way to go. There's still people out there who don't have a PlayStation 5, and they're already talking about PlayStation 5 Pro. So this is a different era, different time that we're living in. So I agree on that. Now, as far as the Game Pass, I have no issues with Game Pass. I think Game Pass is a great service. It saves me a bunch of money. And I like that. I like the fact that I didn't have to pay for RedFall. I like the fact that I can play Flight Simulator without paying for it. I like the fact that I can play Forza Horizon 5 Ultimate. and get all those cars and goodies. There's benefits to that. Sure, absolutely. I love the fact that I can play MLB The Show without not paying $70, opposite to PlayStation 5 where you have to pay $70. So there's a huge benefit there. I love the fact that I can play Game Pass Ultimate on my Shadow PC cloud-based service, and I can take it with me anywhere I go. I love that. I think it's great. But I also understand that in order for your service, in order for your brand to sustain itself, you got to have some heavy hitters. I get it that he's not focused on a console, and I get it that he's not competing with Sony. But if you're not competing with Sony, then whom you competing with? You got to have a competition in order for your service to be successful. Who are you competing with? Are you competing with PlayStation Plus Premium? Who are you competing with? You got to have a competitor. I'm not saying that you can have your service and just focus on the service. But even like Netflix has some exclusive movies. If Netflix didn't have any exclusive TV shows or any exclusive movies, then no one would pay $20 or $24 for Netflix. If Paramount Plus didn't have any exclusive TV shows or any exclusive original programs, no one would care. People can buy those movies elsewhere. Same thing with HBO Max. You got to have some original content in order for your service to thrive. So here's what I'm going to say. I personally think that Phil Spencer has a missed opportunity. And I kept saying this. I've been saying it for months and months and years. I said, problem with Microsoft is the missed opportunity. They always have an opportunity to do something great, and then they miss that opportunity. The amount of money they spend buying out these studios, 40 billions here, 70 billion there, 80 billion here. I mean, with that kind of money, are you kidding me, dude? I would have made dozens of AAA games that would be very successful in a span of 10 years. Okay? I know there's a Hellblade 2 coming out. I know there's a Starfield. And I know there's some other games down the pipeline. But, again, if you want to have a AAA big hit on your hands, early access, demos is the way to go. Because unless you're afraid, see, this is why people always say, unless you're afraid that your game's going to fail and you don't want to showcase what you have, that's why you fail. You have to have some sort of reassurance. Early access. Give people a demo, man. Again, I want to end this video by saying this. All of this can be fixed if you give people an early access. Show us what you're working on. Maybe we can help you. Look at Steam. Steam is a great example. Early access, it helps developers create great games. Look at Ready or Not. Turned out to be a great game now. That's because of the feedback that they're getting. Look at Ground Branch, another tactical shooter. It turned out to be a great game because it's an early access and developers are looking at the feedback, and based on the feedback, they can create great game. So if you want to avoid a failure, well, Phil Spencer, why don't you give an early access to the Game Pass Ultimate members to play Starfield right now and give feedback to developers prior to September? Whenever you release it in September, I don't know, what is it, September 6th or something like that. So I think it's right after Labor Day or Labor Day. So that's it, guys. That's all I have on this 1 hour video. Look, man, I like Phil Spencer. I respect Phil Spencer, but at the same time, I feel that he's stuck on this whole, Game Pass, play anywhere kind of a thing. And and there's nothing wrong with that, but man, you gotta bring something to the table, man. You can sustain yourself as a service if you're just a mediocre service. You gotta have something more than that, man. And it's sad to see where Xbox is at. And I think it's mainly because of their being stubborn. I think this is just a case of being stubborn. I hope Phil sees this video. I really do hope. I'm not being harsh or anything. I'm just being honest. I want Xbox to succeed. But the only way the Xbox is going to succeed is if they listen to a feedback like mine and millions of others out there who truly want to see Xbox grow. I am not a fanboy of either of the console brands. I'm not a Nintendo fanboy. I'm not an Xbox fanboy. I'm not a Sony fanboy. I am just a fan of good quality games. I love good quality games. And let's hope that Microsoft will learn from this. And if they don't learn from this, then, it is what it is. You reap what you saw, and it's going to be what it's going to be. And that's on them. That's on them, All we can do is give our feedback, and hopefully they will listen, All right, guys, sorry for the long video, but like I said, I had to make this video long because there was no any way around this, because it's a long podcast. So this is my reaction, my thoughts on the Kinda Funny Xcast episode 137. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. What are your thoughts on this whole Xbox situation? Where do you think we go from here? Do you agree with Phil? Do you disagree? What are your thoughts on it? But please be respectful down below. We can all have a difference of opinion, but we can do it respectfully. So thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.